Just check sound. Check sound. Check satu. Cek sound. Satu dua tiga cek.
Tanya lagi. Ya, mari coba tuh. Coba tuh. Ini bisa pakai jet itu. Dari desa
Tiga, dua, satu.
Tes 1 2 3 cek. Cek 1 2 3 cek. Tes 2 3. Yang bete bicara sama masuk keluar itu. Tes 1 2 3.
1, 2, 3. Check the mic. One, two, three. Hello, hello. Mic test.
Halo, tes.
Tes. Tes. Oke, Pak. Terima kasih. Tes, tes. Tes, tes. Satu, dua. Tes, 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 tes. Cek, tes, cek.
Kaga. Mari kita mulai Zoom.
Cek satu dua. Teman-teman ada yang belum absen lagi? Yang belum absen angkat tangan. Oke, semua sudah ya.
Oke, halo.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the International Seminar of Faculty of Law, Patimura University, with the theme, The Existence of Indigenous Communities in Facing the Digital Era. First of all, let us offer our praise and gratitude to Almighty God for His blessing and grace that enable us to gather here today, both in person at the Faculty of Law Hall and virtually through the Zoom meeting platform in good health and happiness. Distinguished guests, allow me to acknowledge and extend our warmest greeting to the Honorable Dean of Faculty of Law, Patimura University, Dr. Hendrik Salmon, SH, MH. We're also deeply honored to welcome our distinguished speaker who are joining us online today, the Honorable Prof. Shambhu Prasad Chakrabarti, LLB, LMM, PhD from the University of Engineering and Management, Kolkata, India. The Honorable Dr. Ayub Tori Satrio Kusumo, SH, MH from Universitas 11 Maret, Indonesia, and also our respected lecturers of the Faculty of Law, Patimura University, and all participants of this international seminar, both online and on-site. To begin our seminar today, may I invite everyone to rise for the singing of our national anthem, Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Next, we will listen to the keynote speech from the Dean of Faculty of Law, Patimura University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Honorable Dean, Bapak Dr. Hendrik Salmon, SH, MH.
Not respect me, Vice Deans. Program lead, educators, and educational staff. Good afternoon. Peace be upon you. Greetings to us all. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, and greetings of virtue. Please accept our greetings. Go to message. On this occasion, we are present as participants of the international seminar that is DIE's 69's activity, which has been postponed and can be completed today. This seminar will be held online and offline, which will feature speakers who have the competence for that. I would like to express my deepest thanks to the speakers, Mr. Hendrik Luarisa, SHLM, and as governor, as well as alumni. Would also like to express my heartfelt thanks and the attention you have shown, appreciation to Professor Sambhu Prasad Kakrabati LLB LLM PhD from India's Quota Management University as Dean. I also respect Dr. Ayub Turi Satrio, Kusumo Chair of the Law Study Magister Program University 11 Meerut, Surakarta, who is honored to be the speaker at this seminar. The purpose of the raised theme is related to Indigenous legal society, because currently, amid the development of the Indigenous Legal Society Act, which was included in the 2009 Prolegnas, but its discussion has been delayed. All right, that comes from the Indigenous interest group, as well as from the government's politics. Year 2025. The Indigenous Legal Society Act draft is once again considered to be discussed in the Prolegnas. This is the existence and identity of the Indigenous legal community. The urgency of protecting Indigenous communities is a problem of how to address and analyze each issue that lives and develops in the Indigenous community. This protection must be realized in the form of social justice and maintaining cultural diversity and promoting inclusive development sustainably, to make the indigenous community as a subject, not an object of development. We look at the legal rules in Law Number 1 of 2023 regarding the Criminal Code. Regulations in Articles 2 to 105 recognize the indigenous legal community in the application of living law or applicable law in the indigenous community. On the other hand, it is not presented with the draft of the law of the Criminal Code. In Article 105, this draft contains issues that need to be addressed. So the existence and legality of the indigenous community between the application of material laws and formal ones can be implemented well and harmoniously. Therefore, harmonization must be carried out and must be addressed. Within that framework, the Indigenous Legal Community Seminarian providing feedback on this draft of the law. Especially the Maluku province, in its capacity with 11 city districts, must protect the identity and existence of the indigenous legal community as the land of kings. But the issue to be discussed by the speakers with this competence. We hope there will be some contribution of thought within the framework of this DIES 69 faculty, the effort to provide feedback to the FRIED. Governmentin, the status and legitimacy of the indigenous legal community itself. These are perhaps the main triggers that will be discussed by the speakers present here. The seminar participants said is expected that international participants can understand and comprehend the direction in SPECIT, which we are building and acknowledging the existence and legality of the indigenous legal community. By continuously offering thanks to the presence of the Almighty God's feast. The international seminar today I open officially.
Thank you very much, Bapak Dr. Hendrik Salmon SHMH, for the inspiring message. We will now officially open our international seminar. And to lead the main session, we would like to invite our moderator to take over and guide us through the discussion. Please welcome our moderator, Mrs. Fondal Fidiahatu, SPD, SH, MH, MPD. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Fondal Fidiahatu is a lecturer in the International Law Department of the Faculty of Law, Patimura University. She completed her bachelor's degree in English language education from the Faculty of Teacher Teaching and Education, Patimura University. She also completed her bachelor's degree in law from the Faculty of Law, Patimura University. She completed her master's in education from the postgraduate program in English language education, Patimura University, and her master's in law from the postgraduate program in law, Patimura University. She teaches various courses at the Faculty of Law, including Legal English, International Law, Law and Human Rights, and also specializes teaching, research, publication, and community service in human rights, women rights, and children rights. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big applause to our amazing moderator today.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Shalom, Namo Buddhaya, peace among us. Our Honorable, the Dean of Law Faculty, Dr. Hendrik Salmon SHMH, and also the lecturer, our distinguished speakers, our beloved guests, and also participants our international seminar via on-site in Law Faculty Auditorium and also participant in online meeting site. As we know, the existence of indigenous communities in the digitalization era is marked by a complex interplay of the opportunity and vulnerability. While digitalization presents unprecedented tools for cultural appreciation, political mobilization, and also economic empowerment, its stimulant twists introduce significant threats, primarily in the form of cultural erosion, digital inequality, and also intellectual property exploitation. In a sense, the digital existence of indigenous communities is a battleground where they are fighting to ensure the technology serves as a bridge to the better future. On where their rights, their knowledge, and also culture are respected and can be thrived rather than becoming the latest factor of colonialization. So which in order to commemorate the 69th anniversary of Faculty of Law, Patimura University, we proudly present an international seminar with topic The Existence of Indigenous Community Facing Digitalization Era. And we also have invited our distinguished speakers with us this afternoon and bless us with their present. So please join with me to welcome our honorable speakers. The first speakers, although he may be far away from us in another country, we have Professor Dr. Sambu Prasad Chakrabarti, PhD, LLM, LLB. Give an applause for Professor Shambu.
Thank you.
Okay, and the second one, we have Dr. Ayub Tori Satrio Kusuma, SHMH. Give an applause for Dr. Ayub. Okay,
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen, esteemed speakers and also participants of this international seminar, each of speaker has 15 to 20 minutes to deliver their presentation in this international seminar. Honorable guests, dear colleagues, and all participants, without further ado, let us start with our first speaker. Once again, also I said before that he might far away from us in this country. We have Professor Dr. Shambhu Prasad Chakrabarti, PhD, LLM, LLB. And please allow me to shortly read the CV or biography of our first speaker. As we know that Professor Dr. Shambhu Prasad Chakrabarti, PhD, LLM, LLB, is the Dean of the Department of Law and also the Chair of the Center of Excellence in Sustainable Development Goals at the University of Engineering and Management, Kolkata, India. Professor Shambhu received his LLB and also LLM in business law from Calcutta University and also PhD from University of North Bengal in the area of tribal rights. Professor has taught and researched for over 20 years at the Calcutta University and the West Bengal University of Judicial Science, where he held the Nodal Research Center of the university for the 3 years. Professor Sambu also acted as the chief editor of NUGS Journal of Regulatory Studies during his tenure from August 2019 until 2022. He completed 4 government-funded projects, including a traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expression among the PVTGs of West Bengal. And he is the editor and also author of 9 books published from Thomson Reuters, Springer's Nature, and Emerald Publishing London. And he also wrote over 15 research books and paper and also journal like environmental management and a riverful law review in the area of climate change, traditional knowledge, intellectual property rights, and technology law. And also 3 doctoral scholars has also been successfully surprised by him. He also visited the University of Pajajaran in Indonesia in November 2024 on a teaching assignment from WIPO under recent WIPO Treaty of Intellectual Property Generics Researchers and Associated Traditional Knowledge. And as I remember, this is not your first time to collaborate with Faculty of Law, Professor Sambu. It's about third time you can have a collaboration with us in Law Faculty, Patimura University. Okay, if I can read all the CV, but it will take us long way afternoon. So please, Professor Sambu, the time is yours to present your presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for this introduction. Actually, it's really an honor and privilege to be a part of this international seminar. I think for the second time I'm here with the Faculty of Law of Patimura University. And this time I'm really very happy to see how the university is now focusing into the rights of indigenous communities and the strength of their knowledge and how that can actually impact the economy, the culture of the entire country. So it's really a great pleasure. And thanks to Teresa for all the communication. I've shared my paper with her. So maybe I think, it can be presented from your side. Yes. Thanks, Teresa. Yeah. Well, the topic that I'm going to discuss today we'll try to integrate, the ethical considerations, which is basically the strength of indigenous communities, and how that can help in the development of not only the country, but also the world as a whole. So in the talk, I would like to focus on the strength that indigenous communities have with them. Since, you're already aware of that I've been working with indigenous communities for more than 20 years now. And it's really a pleasure to see how World Intellectual Property Organization and other countries are also focusing on developing international law from international law to domestic law with regard to protection of traditional knowledge. Now, in this discussion, I'll also try to help you understand the nuances that exist between ethics. What is ethics? What is morality? And also what is law, okay? Because 3 are different concepts. At times, they overwhelm each other, but they are completely different. The third one I'd like to highlight is the development part. How indigenous communities can develop themselves and also help the development of the entire country. Now, as we are aware of that indigenous communities are very sustainable, okay? And they are believers, of a spiritual identity and continuation of life. This is one of the most important facets, of not only indigenous communities in Indonesia, but communities across the world, including that of India, I've seen communities in different parts of the world, and they are all basically following the same idea and knowledge concept. One example I can highlight, like, the forest dwellers, like especially the indigenous forest dwellers. I've seen this in India. I've seen this in Canada. Like if there are more than 4, like, eggs in a nest, they will pick only 1. If there are 5, they will pick, like, 2. So they will always keep 3 eggs in the nest. And even when, like, they are in dire need of food, they will not take. If there are only 3, they will not even touch. So this is the type of commitment that these communities have towards nature, towards sustainability, towards continuation of life. And these strengths are basically the founding pillars of ethical practices. We call these ethical practices, okay? Now, I'll just make a comparison between indigenous communities and their way of living with that of the modern civilization. Now, the modern civilization, as you can see on the screen, that we have literally killed more than 90% of large fishes, okay? So if you go and have a look at how these industrial people use trawlers and technology to bring those fishes out, they forget all about, the entire cycle of those fishes. Their only target is the fish. They forget about that there are other, living creatures that accompany them. Like they don't bother about the breeding time of even these large fishes. Forget about the other fishes that they catch. So they just throw the fishes that they catch, which is not of their interest, and they're just gone for a waste. It's just killing of, cycles. And that has led to a study. If you can look at this particular study, this came up in 2003. So 90% is already gone in 2003, and we have crossed another 22 years. So you can well understand what is the current scenario of these species at this moment. Now, only in the last 50 years, okay, we have lost more than 60% of wildlife. Now, this is a staggering problem. And this is not a problem in Western countries. This is the problem with the Global South, because Global South has more than 70% of the forest cover. And we are, being the target of big companies, big organizations. And we, from the local legal perspective, not being aware of the consequences, large, huge consequences. This is not a consequence that's going to face by us. It's about our next generation and generation that coming up next. Now, this particular point, in many research, I've heard that, it's the colonizers, who invaded us, who reigned for more than 200 years. They are the responsible for all the destruction. But if you look into the studies, that's coming up, we have completely gone wrong, not prior to 100 years, okay? Maybe they have started the journey, but we are continuing with that journey and coming to a close of this particular scenario. Can we come to the next slide, please? And then I'll help you understand. It's not only about the, things, it's also about the water. The fresh water has gone down to such an extent. And that's again, the reason behind this is the non-use of natural, land races. The genetically modified seeds, that is the subject matter of food that comes of the crops today, consumes approximately more than 7 to 10% of water than an ordinary land race does. So you can well imagine how fast the water, the fresh water under the soil, is being absorbed by the crops. Okay, so this is again a terrible scenario. I spoke about the wildlife. I spoke about the forest cover. In one of my recent talk in Georgetown University in the Gulf Conference, where I was invited as a speaker, I made this small research, and I found out that almost all the Gulf countries, who are basically, the hotspot of biodiversity, okay, have substantially reduced their forest cover. Now, if that is happening, so that's happening everywhere. Now, that has led to a massive rise in the temperature. Now, this is a very very typical problem. Now, if you look at this particular picture today on the screen, you'll find that there is a trending rise in the temperature. If you look into the 2023 the scenario, you see that it has the highest from 1850. Just imagine 1850 till 2023. Okay, we have recorded the highest temperature in 2023. Now, if we thought that that's an exception, we're wrong. Again, in the next year, 2024, we had beaten what was there in 2023. If we thought that, well, 2024 and 2023 is an exception, then comes 2025, where we're living now. And if you look at that, you'll find that the top 3 warmest years on record is in this year, 2025. So this is a terrible condition, and this is leading to a lot of sea level rise. Now, if we come to the next slide, you'll find why this is staggeringly dangerous for all of us. Now, in Panama, okay, we come to the next slide. Yeah, in Panama, which is, of course, an indigenous hotspot, biodiversity, indigenous knowledge, huge cultural expressions. And they're there for thousands of years. And now, they're the worst affected. And all the entire, if we come to the next slide, you'll find that almost the entire island will now be submerged underwater. Now, that is a picture. Like, that's not drawn by me or an artificial intelligence, an actual picture taken from the top. And you can see how the water is submerging the entire community of Panama. As we speak today, thousands of people from that particular place are now being evacuated. So if this is the condition, we have to understand, the challenges involved. We come to the next slide. So until now, what I've spoken about is what indigenous communities are and how good they have been, how ethical, the world has been living through. And only in the last 100 years, we have completely turned the scenario around. And now, if you look into how the West have been representing us and our knowledge, they have always misappropriated our indigenous knowledge. And on the contrary, they've always said that this is superstition. Okay, now this is a huge dichotomy. Now, if I come to this particular slide, which talks about biopiracy, now this term has its origin in Indonesia. And it's the Indonesian indigenous communities who actually found out the medicinal value of this. And you'll be astounded to know that many countries, including India, is, of course, turmeric also is there in India. Now, they are making cancer drugs with turmeric. So the cancer drug, which is so expensive abroad in the Western countries, are very cheap, okay, when we use turmeric as a variant in coming up with this. Now, this has been tried to be patented by US in 1995. Then India, opposed this particular discussion in 1997. USPTO revoked that patent. So we have to understand that there are laws, and we have to make the best of those laws. We come to the next slide. Now, the next slide will talk about a cultural expression. Okay. Now, this is batik. Now, this picture that I've taken is actually a batik that was presented to me. And I took a picture last day when I was making the slide. It's so beautiful. It talks about, such amazing, not only experts' culture, it's also about the river. It's also about the flowers. It's also about the amazing diversity that the country has. Now, and that's the reason why in 2009, UNESCO inscribed batik as a craft of Indonesia. Okay. Now, if you take into consideration batik in India, it's completely different. It has a different variety. It has a different, objective. But now, if you look into European countries, they can get, false, unauthorized sale of these batik, which is Indonesian batik, Indian batik, and there we can't do anything because it's not within my jurisdiction. Okay. So now we're trying to come up with geographical indications in some cases. But then again, let me tell you that this is quite a small effort to do that. Now, if we come to the next slide, this is a very interesting slide, the development slide. Now, how indigenous communities can actually help in the development of our economy. Now, So far, I spoke about the ethical consideration, the strength that they have. I also spoke about, like, how European countries and Western countries have misappropriated our knowledge, our cultural expressions. Now, if we can only rely on these two things, okay, and try to promote this amongst our people and the people outside, then I think, we are going to change what has been a complete problematic scenario to a complete amazing successful scenario. Now, and this is exactly what I call a development. We come to the next slide, please. And this is only because this can only happen because of the technological intervention and artificial intelligence. Now, as we know that, see, all of us are using mobile phones, all of us today, almost, the digital divide is now being mitigated at a very, very fast rate. But now, how can we make the use of technology? Okay, we are using technology in all facets of life, as you can see on the screen. We are using technology for preparation of food. We use RO, EV, and everything for our drinking water. Place of abode, we're planning for smart cities, smart rooms. We can change the temperature of our air conditioner with our phones. We can do everything with our phone today. We can pay even with our phones. Okay, so everything is there. So technology is a part of it. But the best part of technology is that we've got artificial intelligence today. And slowly and steadily, we are now moving on that particular dependency on technology, especially artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, and predictive artificial intelligence. And this is exactly where we can see a huge amount of research coming up. And where, indigenous languages are now being protected. In Australia, this is happening. In Washington University, there is a study that was published in Nature 3-4 months back. I saw that, and there, as we know, that entire indigenous knowledge, traditional knowledge, is transmitted verbally from one generation to that of the other. Majority of the indigenous languages are not written languages. Okay. So how do we protect? As soon as one elderly person dies, we are seeing, especially in Australia, that an entire knowledge system is vanishing. Okay, so now they are using artificial intelligence to protect to prevent the perishing of language. So you'll be astounded to know that more than 1,500 languages have vanished from our Earth only in the last 100 years. And another 2,500 languages are in the verge of extinction. Now, see, as I told you, that the language is the basis of continuation of the knowledge system. Now, if we really want to protect the knowledge, we have to protect the language. Now, if we have to protect the language, today we have no other option but to use technology. And this is exactly what I think, all of us can now think of how we can really do that. Now, if we come to the next slide, you'll find out that this technology can be used to defend as well as to promote. Defend against what? Very easily, with help of AI technology, we can find out who are violating, who are misappropriating, who are taking our designs without our permission. So it's very easy. Spotting the perpetrator is easier. Now, and so for example, how do we really develop the defense mechanism? Say, for example, in Indonesia, right now, you're planning to come up with laws. Now, if we go for a comparative analysis with other countries, with AI, we can very easily do that research, okay? Very easily come up with what are the other countries doing. Previously, we had to wait, we have to spend a lot of time, a lot of money to find out exactly what's happening in another part of the world, but not today. Okay, so AI can be used in that. Number three, say for example, there's so many people who comes to Indonesia. There's so many people who comes to India, okay? And many of them are not aware of what are the ethical standards, considerations that we all have in our countries. With AI, we can very easily talk to other people, communicate with other people who are coming to the country, that these are our ethical standards. These are the way by which you have to communicate with an indigenous community. You simply can't come and talk to a community member and learn about the medicinal value of a plant take some samples, go back home and patent it and sell in a completely different country. That can be completely prevented. So, and of course, like at the very inception of my talk, I think I'm in the last slide. I think, it's important that we have to now start thinking of domestic laws. Let me tell you, India is trying to come up with a law for protection of traditional knowledge from 2019. And still there is no law here. In 2019, one bill came up, 2020, another bill came up, 2025, no law as of date. So this is the scenario of many countries, including that of mine. But now, international law is now being invoked. As I told you, the World Intellectual Property Organization has now come up with a patent treaty which deals with traditional knowledge. And I think, in another couple of years, all the members, like including that from Indonesia, will go and start talking about how this law can actually be taken into consideration more formally. So I think, it's important that we plan in a very systematic way, design in a very systematic and structured way, bringing in the people who are interested in this business, come up with the experts, vision and version, may integrate that in your mainstream research. Say, for example, you're doing an LLM program, you can prepare some of the students who will deal with this. Okay, some of the students will deal with protection of indigenous language, how that can be done through artificial intelligence. And I think, if all of us start pushing, in this direction, we will be in a very strong position and determine the future of not only indigenous communities, but the knowledge that the indigenous communities can actually make a change in the world at large. If we can impose laws by which indigenous communities members can participate and tell that these are the species, they have their breeding season during these phases, we can prevent the big people from intruding our waters, from destroying those fishes. So I think that's one of the example. I think, maybe another day with many more time and we can discuss at length about this. But that is a small thing that I'm trying to come up with for this seminar. I hope this makes sense and help the community and also the university to think in an appropriate direction. Thank you once again, the University of Patna, for giving me the opportunity. Just in case anybody have any questions, they can come up with them. Thank you.
Okay, once again, thank you for Professor Shambu. Thank you for your presentation. That's not only enlightening presentation, but also can increase our knowledge about the ethics and development of indigenous communities. If I may have case 6 that we can conclude from Professor Shambu presentation regarding that there are 4 factor in the talk. The first one is about indigenous communities. The second is ethic, morality, and law. The third one is development, and the last one is the road ahead. The first one is about indigenous community, and their knowledge is about the basis of sustainability, continuation of life in our planet, and also ethical practice and spiritual identity. There's also we can see about the example about Professor Shambu give, but how our planet has changed in the last 100 years. It's also about the water, about wildlife, forest cover, and also wetlands, and rise in the temperature, massive displacement due to the seawater rise, and also complete catastrophe around the corner. It's also about the Professor Shambo also give an example in Panama about Panama prepares to evacuate first island facing of the rising sea levels. And also indigenous people or knowledge falsely rebrand as a superstition. We can see in the slide that about unauthorized use of knowledge. The first one is about the biopiracy, and also about turmeric, and also unauthorized use of the knowledge. For example, give an example about the batik, our traditional custom or traditional design about batik. And design is from 2009, UNESCO inscribed batik as a craft of Indonesia. And also geographical indication is now being used. and also the development, the era of digitalization, and the last one is about the artificial intelligence, about indigenous knowledge get a new ray of hope. There's also a easy surveillance, easy understanding, easy notification, requesting to state domestic law, and also new ways to protecting, preserving, and promoting traditional knowledge and traditional culture expression about indigenous language. And the one key that that I take is about from Prof. Sambu is we have to plan and we have to design and bring a people to push the same direction. Just like Professor Sambu said that maybe we hope that one day Indonesia will be join us to make good regulation about the law to protect about indigenous people or indigenous community. And once again, give a big applause for Professor Shambu. I think maybe the time is a limit, yeah. And I hope that maybe in the next future we can have another presentation about this special or an interesting um, topic. Okay, once again, give one applause for Professor Shambu. Thank you. Okay, honorable ladies and gentlemen, and also our distinguished speakers and all participants. Before we move to the next speaker, let's keep your question. Yes, let's keep your question for the next question and answer session. If you have if you have a question, you can keep for the next session. As we will move forward for our second presentation or second presenter of the day, we have Dr. Ayub Tori Satrio Kusuma, SH, Please allow me to shortly read the biography of our second speaker. Dr. Ayub Tori Satrio Kusuma, SIMH, is an academic and lecturer in the field of law. He's also rector in the Department of International Law, Faculty of Law, Universitas 11 Maret. He is now the head of the Master of Law Study Program, Universitas 11 Maret, and has a research expertise or interest in international law, international humanitarian law, and also international refugee law, and also active research group and Center for Constitutional and Human Rights Research and also Development from 2014 until present, and also International Law and Globalization 2019 to present, and also about work history, research, and publication. Dr. Ayub also have the first one is Indonesia contribution to global partnership through the international law within the framework of achieving the sustainable development goals. It's recent year 2025, and also applied excellent research and strengthening the Peticam institution in 2025, and also reconstruction of the legal model for fraud prevention in the implementation of the national health insurance system in Indonesia. There are so many books that Dr. Ayub give or write. It's about the teaching material on tourism law and local tourism, the book of bankruptcy law, and also the death penalty review from the international law and human rights perspective, and about the community service activities about mitigating climbing risks on the Mount Lawu, the risk identification, and also prevention strategies in 2025. Okay, without further ado, let us welcome the presentation of Dr. Ayub Tori Satrio Kusuma, SHMH. The time is yours.
Thank you, the moderator, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, the Dean of Faculty of Law, Universitas Patimura, the first speaker, Professor Sambu, and the distinguished participant, international seminar and Faculty of Law, Universitas Patimura. Uh, This afternoon, we will discuss about the international legal instrument for the protection of indigenous people's rights. Uh, we know that the indigenous people is very, very important to be discussed in Indonesia. We know that Indonesia is uh, many of culture, many of people, and many of islands have to give and get the indigenous people as well. For example, we can spare it and we can be get the comparison about the tribal peoples. Now we know there are I spared about the two criteria. The first is subjective and the second is objective criteria. We know that the indigenous people is a self-identification as belonging to an indigenous people. It is a subjective criteria, and the objective criteria is descent from populations who inhabited the country of geographical region at the time of conquest, colonization, or establishment of present state boundaries. They retain some of all of their own social, economic, cultural, and political institution, irrespective of their legal status. So we know that in Indonesia, many people in Indonesia, as indigenous people, for example, Jawa, Aceh, Papua, Maluku, Bali, etc. And in Australia, there is Aborigine people. In India and in America, asal in Malaysia and Sabah and Sarawak. The character is among the colonization or establishment of the present state boundaries. We can say that indigenous people is a the similar meaning and the similar and so clear about the tribal peoples. The tribal people is self-identification as belonging to tribal people. Their social, cultural, and economic condition distinguished from them from other section of national community. So there is a very the similar position of, between indigenous people and tribal peoples, but it is a very different. Their social, culture, and economic conditions distinguish them from other section of the national community. Maybe in Indonesia we can say the masyarakat hukum adat atau MHA. Their status is regulated purely or partially by their own custom or tradition or by special laws or regulation. In Indonesia, masyarakat hukum adat, or adat community is protected by the government of law. Although not every masyarakat hukum adat is get the regulation, but many of masyarakat hukum adat get the regulation. Approximately 2 months ago, or the last month, I get the evaluation about the from the student of doctoral studies who write the dissertation is the protection of masyarakat hukum adat Tengger in East Java. Masyarakat hukum adat in Tengger is not fully protected by the regulation because of masyarakat hukum adat in Tengger only get the protection and regulation by desa, by village. So it is very important to me to protect and to promote the indigenous people and the tribal people. And we can say that many kinds of vulnerability can to be affect to be caused for the indigenous people. Indigenous people, who are they? Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speaker, there is no yet a collective definition of indigenous people. I repeat once more, there is not collective definition of indigenous people. This the global word holds several particular characteristics such as first, self-identification as indigenous people at the individual level and accepted by community as their member. We can say and we can look at our social community. Where is the indigenous people? Approximately, maybe in Java, in the Java Island. Many kind of indigenous people. For example, Jawa. Jawa separated by the West Java, Sunda, Baduy, and the Central Java and special region of Yogyakarta. Many kinds of Java come from Mataram, and the East Java come from Mataram or maybe Majapahit, Kediri. So we can call it then it is a Java. Second, historical continuity with pre-colonial and or the pre-settler societies. In Indonesia, many kinds of, we can say that suku, or we can say that indigenous people. I try to get the translate from the live dictionary or the Google. Indigenous people translate by masyarakat adat. I think in point of view for my opinion, I think it is a different between indigenous people and masyarakat adat, masyarakat hukum adat. A strong link to territories and surrounding natural resources. Masyarakat hukum adat in maybe in Central Java, Samin, Tengger East Java, Gunung Kidul maybe in special region of Yogyakarta, Baduy in West Java, have the strong link to territories and surrounding natural resources. For example, maybe in Papua, in Aceh, or in Minahasa maybe. The fourth is distinct social, economic, or political system. Nah, we can say that distinct is different principle. We can say from international law, distinction is pembedaan. Distinct social, economic, or political system. We know that. Where is the distinction from indigenous people in Indonesia? Are they get the distinction system, for example, economic, political, and social? So, if the dictionary say that indigenous people the same with masyarakat adat or the adat community, it is, I think, it is to be a deeper discussion. And the fourth is diction, language, culture, and beliefs. In Indonesia, many kinds of people, community have the special, the own culture. We can say the region culture, atau we can say that bahasa adat. From the diction, language, diction, culture, and belief, we have to get some point of view. What is the indigenous people have to fulfill the rights and have to the protection by the government or by the regulation, not only central government but also the special or the region governor and the major governor in the area from non-dominant groups of society. Yes, we can say that. For example, we can say in the Jakarta, there is a adat community. We can say that Betawi. Now, in Jakarta, Betawi settled or have their house far from the central Jakarta. For example, from the East Jakarta, from the south of Jakarta, from maybe the west of Jakarta, that they resolve to mine and reproduce their ancestral environments and system as distinctive people and communities. In Indonesia, I don't know what the is masyarakat hukum adat is same with the indigenous people. I think it is a different. Indigenous people are the holder of unique language, knowledge system, and belief and possess invaluable knowledge or practices for the sustainable management of natural resources. For example, in Java, in Central Java, there is a Samin from the Pati region and Blora region. Masyarakat Samin community have the unique language, knowledge system, and believe and possess invaluable knowledge and practices for the sustainable management of natural resources. Now, from the last, maybe the many years ago, there is a conflict between the government and masyarakat Samin. They cause for the plan of the government to establish the cement factory. Cement factory is the main cost from to build building, road. That is the area of masyarakat Samin. And masyarakat Samin have not get the impact, a good impact or positive impact from the establish of cement factory. The third, indigenous people strive for the recognition of their identities, their ways of life, and their right to traditional lands, territories, and natural resources. In Indonesia, okay, we can say there is or there are masyarakat hukum adat, but masyarakat hukum adat in Indonesia can be reached, can be approached, and can be regulated by the government and get the common identities by the KTP, electronic identity, and the way of life is also maybe from Pancasila, and the right to traditional land. So indigenous people have to fulfill the right to traditional land, how to contribute about the masyarakat or indigenous people to give the policy, to give the activity in traditional land, territories, and natural resources. There is a maybe mistake about the abuse of the natural resources in masyarakat hukum adat or in the national community, adat community. For example, the repossession to please something to establish the road, maybe establish the factory, and etc. etc. Ladies and gentlemen, why indigenous people is very important. The histories of indigenous people have been marked by discrimination. We know that the story of Aborigine, history of United States of America, where the England get the colonization of to Australia, and Aborigine is gets settled for the far of the central Australia. They usually get the marginalization, ethnocide, or even genocide, and unfortunately, violation of their fundamental rights still occur. We know that from Africa or in Tibet and the East Asia. The indigenous people in Tibet get the violation about maybe from the China Republic. Ethnocide, maybe genocide. 2 weeks ago, my student from Pakistan have the thesis about the female genocide, femicide. So in Pakistan, from my student, there is the discrimination between women and men, and I asked her that are all of the government in Pakistan get the discrimination about the woman? Maybe the discrimination is not about the have no regulation, but maybe the government or the one person on the not all of the person in Pakistan get the discrimination about between women and men. So it is very important how to get the regulation. And what is the vulnerability about the indigenous people? Vulnerability to violation of their basic rights. Basic right is right to life, right to settle, right to speak, and maybe right to get the education, such as prohibited from using and preserving of their own language, holding their rituals. We know that indigenous people usually maybe get the special ritual for to pray to God, or wearing their traditional costumes. In Indonesia, I think many of region, many of city have the region regulation. We can say that perda, the region of identity, or we can say that identitas daerah. For example, in Surakarta, all of civil servant school every Thursday use the batik to wear the costume in daily activities. For example, in the office, in the government office, or the school, etc. Maybe the vulnerability is the barrier of language also often limits the opportunity to have proper education for their descendants. Education is the main of the right, on the basic rights. So the basic right is not only have to live, right to eat, right to get clothes, but also I think now in the modern era, education is the basic of rights. Maybe government or local government cannot reach the people who stay who live in so far about the central of the region, so far or for the uh, uh, from the government, central government. So it is the very one of the vulnerability. People cannot get the education well. Indigenous communities in the world generally belong to the poorest and most marginalized. Yes, indigenous people usually poorest because of they cannot reach well about the policy by government. They cannot reach the good education. They cannot reach some of them that fulfill the basic human right. Most marginalized groups in the world and generally have the least income. Ladies and gentlemen, in Indonesia, there are the regulation about the income. We can say that upah minimum regional minimum salary, education, health, and life expectancy, and the highest rate of infant mortality, alcoholism, and crime within a society. So, ladies and gentlemen, the many kind of vulnerability, the question are how we fulfill the protection, how we fulfill the human rights about the indigenous people, not only us, but also the government, or maybe the local government, and the academician, how to give the right, or make the right to fulfill about the human rights protection in indigenous people. There are many kind of legal instruments in international law. The first is United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. ILO Convention, International Labour Organization Convention 1989, number 169. ICRCR, ICCPR, and United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, September 2007. This is a non-binding declaration adopted by the General Assembly, with Indonesia as one of the supporting countries during the fought for adoption. The name of declaration, many people can adopt the declaration. It is a different about the ratification or accession. If the convention get to enter into force in the city in the country, have to ratification or accession by the country. But if there is a declaration, country can adopt to support it and to make the regulation in this own country similar or supported by the declaration from the United Nations. there were 143 countries supported the adoption, 11 abstained, and 4 countries against. However, the 4 countries have now supported the adoption of the United Nations Declaration Indigenous People. The first article, indigenous people have the right to full the enjoyment as a collective or as individuals of all 7 human rights as fundamental freedom as recognized in the Charter of United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and International Human Rights Law. And the interesting is the Article 3 that individuals have the right to the self-determination. It is very important. So if in Indonesia, maybe for example, the government have to push the repression about the adat, we it can make the internal disturbances and tension, and maybe they get separated from the Indonesian Republic. By virtue of the right, they freely determine their political status. And freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. So I hope in Indonesia, there is no mistaken and there is no abuse about the indigenous people. Government have the regulation to protect the indigenous people. For example, masyarakat hukum adat, village, desa terpencil, etc. How to the name of NKRI. And to the fulfill of the basic rights, fulfill the indigenous people. And Article 6, every indigenous individual has the right to a nationality. In Indonesia, from Sabang until Merauke, Miangas until Rote, come from the decolonization of the Netherlands. The first name is Indonesia. So it is we must discuss that in Indonesia many kind of hukum adat, masyarakat hukum adat, indigenous people maybe. For example, from the last slide from the Professor Sambung that we have to protect, to promote, and to promotion about the indigenous people. The ILO Convention, the provision of UNDRIP and the Convention, UNDRIP expressly affirm indigenous people right to self-determination, while Convention number 169 does not include such a provision. Indonesia has not ratified this convention, but although Indonesia have done a participant, Indonesia have the moral to use from the United Nations Convention to bring in the national regulation. We can say that Rudolf von Sering that the Fusi interesting that every state can get or put or take the international regulation sepanjang as good as no bertentangan from the we can say Pancasila as the ideology. However, look back to the fundamental principle of international law such as justice and humanity, protection of basic rights for the people, including indigenous people. Indonesia support the UN trip from this. Indonesia, one of the country to support the UN trip. So Indonesia have to get the protection for the indigenous people. ICCPR and ICCR, Indonesia as the participant 2005. Indirectly, protection and ensuring the rights of indigenous people through a guarantee of the right to self-determination of all people. Ensuring the rights of political choice, cultural development, and socio-economic activities, although they were not explicitly and directly to point to indigenous people rights, but both the ICPRCR and ICICR are applicable to them. Now, what is challenge in Indonesia? My last presentation. Basic right protection for indigenous people. The government in Indonesia have to make the regulation or have to make the policy to fulfill the human right for the basic protection for indigenous people. The second, supportive for the right of self-determination, political and social economic rights. For example, Samin, Badui, Betawi maybe from Indonesia, from Jakarta. Opportunity to nurture and develop the traditional characteristic. Every month in Java, there is a traditional market to know and to give information about the traditional knowledge, the traditional culture from the society in Java, especially in Central Java, in Surakarta, and special region of Jakarta. Indigenous people as a part of Indonesian values, cultural and wealth. So I think many kind of island in Indonesia have the same time and the same uh, uh, opportunity to fulfill by human rights, by government in regulation. And the third, protection and assurance of indigenous people's rights as applied to other citizens. Maybe it is the local government make the regulation. We can say that peraturan daerah to fulfill the protection about the health and about the workers. Jadi memberikan perlindungan terhadap jaminan kesehatan, special insurance about the wealth and workers from the community. I think it is enough. Thank you very much for the moderator, the participant, and also the speaker. The time I give come back from to the moderator. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Okay, once again, give an applause for Dr. Ayub Tori. Thank you, Dr. Ayub, for your comprehensive presentation regarding government support for indigenous communities. And if I may highlight about your presentation, it's about the indigenous people and also tribal peoples. And you also said that masyarakat hukum adat is only or protected by the law. For example, you said in a suku Tengger is Java, but it's not only fully protection. That's only protection only by the desa or the village. And also you said that one of your students in Pakistan said that there are female genocide. Yes, it's about discrimination about the women in Pakistan. So there's also many things that you say in your presentation slide, Dr. Ayub Tori, about indigenous people, who are they? There's also historical continuity about this distinct social, economic, and political system, and also distinct language, culture, and also belief. And also about there are several convention as that's not only international convention that protect about indigenous community, but also the law in Indonesia. As long as it's not against with the Pancasila as the way life of Indonesia. You also said that there are UN DRIP September 2007. UN DRIP is about United Nations Declaration on the Right of Indigenous People, and also ILO Convention 1989, number 169, and also about ICCPR and ICESCR. It talks about the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and also the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. And you also give example about supporting political and economic and culture of indigenous community. That in Java, there's always traditional market that always used by the community to supporting about political, economic, and cultural of indigenous community. And the point is, as long as not against with the Pancasila of way of life in Indonesia, we should support and We hope that someday the indigenous people or community will fully protected not only in international convention but also in national law. Once again, give an applause for Dr. Ayub Tori SHMH. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, to all distinguished attendants, ladies and gentlemen, and also participants of this international seminar, I believe all of you already have a lot of questions. And I will open the first question and answer session. Maybe we can start with 3 person or 2 or 3 person that would like to ask our speakers. You can ask the speaker, the first one maybe for Professor Shambu, and maybe you can ask for Dr. Tori about what our speaker is already presented about. Maybe it's not only from the guest or participant in the auditorium of law faculty, but also in Zoom meeting. You can raise your hand. If you have a question from the left or the right, you can raise your hand, or in Zoom meeting side, maybe in the Zoom meeting, maybe you can write your answer, write your question on the chat session. Anyone? We have about 5 minutes in question and answer session. Maybe if you want to ask in Indonesia, we can have to translate in English. Apabila ada yang mau bertanya menggunakan bahasa Indonesia, kita bisa bantu translate ke bahasa Inggris. Anyone? It's a very good topic about the existence of indigenous community facing this digitalization era. So maybe in auditorium of Faculty of Law or in Zoom meeting, you can write down your question. Oh, for Professor Samu and Dr. Ivtori, we can make just wait a little bit because they have to translate from Bahasa into English. Okay, maybe. Okay, finally we have one. You can stand up and say your name. Okay, you can say your name and you want to give the question for Professor Sambu or for Dr. Ayub, please.
Thank you. Perkenalkan nama saya Rengeran Manggala. Saya ingin bertanya apa tantangan yang dihadapi masyarakat hukum ada dalam mempertahankan hak ulayat mereka. Bagaimana interaksi antara hukum, adat hukum, hukum internasional dalam penyelesaian sengketa tanah? Sejauh mana modernisasi mempengaruhi keberlangsungan nilai-nilai hukum adat? Itu saja. Terima kasih.
Bisa diulangi sekali lagi. Okay, you want to ask Professor Shambu or Dr. Ayub?
Dr. Sambu.
Oh, Professor Sambu. Okay, Professor Sambu, we have one person who want to ask you about. The first one is, what are or can you mention the challenge to keep the right of the indigenous people? Okay, what the
Yeah,
challenge
yeah.
government have? They want to keep the right of the indigenous people. And the second one is how far the law or instrument of law can protect the rights of the indigenous people land.
Right.
Is it for you, Prof? Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Professor.
Yeah. There are two aspects to this particular question. The first is about the rights in general, how rights can be given to them, and then how that can be actually implemented. Now, as a matter of fact, I have been to Indonesia a couple of times, and I have been to even Java areas, and as you all are aware of, that Indonesia hosts one of the oldest pyramids on the planet, the Gunung Padang. Even when I was around 1 kilometer, 1 hour, from that particular place, but I couldn't plan that accordingly. Maybe the next time I go there. But I visited a few indigenous communities there, uh, and I found that a lot of interventions can be done, and I think that can be done from the research perspective, from the academic perspective. Uh, I'll tell you why the indigenous communities have not been given those rights, or whatever it is, the challenges. Uh, it's because that the mainstream people, the non-tribal people, as well as the state, the government, have not been aware of the strength of these communities and the knowledge of these communities. Okay. And it's important that the academic universities like yours and many others tries to bridge this gap between the state on one hand and the local communities and the indigenous communities on the other. So now this in this university or many other university can come up with their research findings as to what extent the knowledge of these indigenous communities can be of help. Now, what we have seen is that many indigenous members, especially the younger generation, is no longer practicing the indigenous knowledge system of their elders, of their parents, of their fathers and ancestors. Maybe because, as I told in my presentation, that the European construct of telling that indigenous knowledge, many of them are basically superstition. It does not work. It's not the mainstream knowledge. So if we can somehow, of course, with the help of technology, with the help of science, try to come up with experimentation and telling that, yes, these are the strength to this knowledge, I think there is no harm in accepting that particular set of people who host this particular knowledge. So once we find out the relevance of something, very soon we try to protect it, we try to promote it, we try to, so that particular thing becomes very attractive and exceptionally important for us. And that can be done by the research community, by the academic communities. So in this way, a lot of challenges of these communities can be addressed. Now, if their practices, if their knowledge becomes financially viable, so their next generation will carry on with the practices of the ancestral generation. So that sustainability, that quality of knowledge, that remains intact. And on the other hand, the state gets the benefit of it. I'll just try to raise here an example. I think a lot of us are aware that last week and this week is the time when we are getting a lot of information about the Nobel Prize winners across the world. All of us must be aware of, or should be aware of, a professor. She's not a professor. She is. She don't even have a doctorate degree, and she got a Nobel Prize. She's from China. Her name is Tutu, and she discovered and she got the Nobel for medicine. And she uses traditional and indigenous knowledge to remedy big problems of human health. So I would request all of us who are sitting here to look into the strength of traditional knowledge, how Dr. Tutu actually helped in bringing that particular knowledge in the light of the world and saved so many thousands and thousands of people's life. So it's important that we highlight the relevance of this knowledge, try to bring that particular knowledge in the mainstream, and automatically a lot of their individual challenges will be mitigated. So I think it's us who can help. It's not that a law comes up one day, protects the right of this is the right, that is the right. Well, that is important nonetheless. But the people should know what impact that these people are making to us. And we can only do that when we bring the indigenous people on the discussion table, learn from them the knowledge that they have. We also have the scientific modern knowledge system. So we integrate the traditional and the modern knowledge system and come up with a much more stronger knowledge system to protect our planet, to save our livelihood and the world at large. So I think that's how the challenges can be mitigated in the long run. And also the importance of law. Here, as I told you already in my slides, that international law is moving ahead of domestic laws. And now it's time for jurisdictions like Indonesia, India, and many other people from the... I was also invited in one of the discussion of Western Australia, where they're planning to come up with a biodiscovery bill. So I think it's important that all of us should take essential measures to prevent the dissemination of this knowledge. And this can only be done by protecting and conferring rights to the indigenous communities. And I think that can be best be helped by educational organizations like us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Shabu, for your answer about the challenges to keep the rights of indigenous people and also how far the convention or the international can protect the rights of the land about indigenous people. Okay, once again, maybe there's people or students in auditorium of Faculty of Law or in Zoom. Okay, we have the other students of Faculty of Law who wants to ask any question. What's your name and you want to give a question for Professor Sambu or Dr. Ayub?
My name is Bastian Alikeela. I'm from Faculty of Law, Fatimura University. I address this question to Dr. Ayub. My question is, what is the government's policy on protecting the right of indigenous peoples? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. Your question is for Dr. Ayub about what is government policy to protecting indigenous community. Okay, Professor Dr. Ayub.
Thank you very much for the participant. I think it is very interesting question. The first, the government, especially the local government, have to make the regulation about the masyarakat hukum adat or adat community. Until now, the regulation about the masyarakat hukum adat not yet fulfilled about in every adat community. More of adat community in Bali get the fulfill regulation. But for example, in East Java, special region of Yogyakarta, some of region in Central Java have no the regulation or policy by the local government. It is the first. Jadi harus ada kebijakan yang melindungi masyarakat hukum adat di setiap daerah melalui pemerintah lokal atau pemerintah daerah. The second, to protect from the agrarian conflict. Jadi, so how to avoid the bagaimana mengurangi konflik agraria between or among the government and adat community. Why it is usually there are conflict between or among adat community and the government. Masyarakat hukum adat itu biasanya masyarakat hukum adat usually do not know their land used by the government to the social activity, to the social utility, to the social policy. So there is a conflict about uh, how to make a policy, and government have to reach adat community to protect their land and to protect their activity similar or berbarengan, jadi berbarengan dengan kebijakan pemerintah. And the third, permasalahannya yang ketiga adalah ketidakjelasan kepemilikan. The land of masyarakat hukum adat atau tanah masyarakat hukum adat is the government land. Jadi itu milik pemerintah, hutan pemerintah. We can say the taman nasional kan gitu. Kita mengatakannya taman nasional. Tapi permasalahannya, what is the problem is the lack of education by the adat community. The loss of education by the adat community. Adat community do not know that the taman nasional milik pemerintah and the utility have the permission by the government. Jadi penggunaannya harus menggunakan apa namanya izin dari pemerintah. Mereka menganggap bahwa it is our culture and I use the line for the daily activities. Mereka dengan leluasa masuk. Ini menimbulkan permasalahan. It is can be the big problem. Dan yang terakhir, how to membentuk apa namanya the special regulation for adat community. Peraturan yang lebih spesifik terkait atau berkenaan dengan masyarakat hukum adat. Karena kalau disandingkan, if they similar with the village, I think it is very different. Desa dengan masyarakat hukum adat itu sangat berbeda sekali. Desa bukan masyarakat hukum adat, dia tidak mempunyai tatanan budaya, tetapi desa itu mempunyai tatanan struktur kan gitu. Berbeda dengan I think it is different with masyarakat hukum adat. Dan yang terakhir, at the last we can do to protect the masyarakat hukum adat adalah usually biasanya state have not a mandatory, tidak mempunyai kewajiban. Because of the state is not a participant of United Convention. Negara merasa tidak punya kewajiban dan tanggung jawab because of bukan sebagai negara peserta. Have not ratified as not and not accession. Tapi, but we have in the legal condition and political condition, di dalam keadaan hukum dan politik, setiap negara itu terikat. Every state have to fulfill the convention, memenuhi konvensi itu dalam bentuk keterkaitan morality. Nah, we can say in the preamble of our constitution, ikut melaksanakan ketertiban dunia, itu jelas sebenarnya. Tetapi pertanyaannya adalah seringkali pemerintah menganggap kita bukan peserta. We have not the participant of the convention. And we have no regulation and we have no mandatory to fulfill the convention. Ini menjadi masalah. Sehingga di sini, now this problem, Masyarakat hukum adat, or we can say the indigenous people, the lack of the protection about the human right because of our government. Jadi masyarakat hukum adat itu bermasalah tidak hanya dengan not only with the society but also with the government. Jadi bermasalah itu bukan hanya dengan masyarakat sekitar tapi juga dengan pemerintah. Ini yang menjadi masalah. Apalagi kalau sudah bermasalah dengan pemerintah, mereka tidak punya kekuatan untuk membentuk apapun. Itu jawaban dari saya, begitu pentingnya atau begitu peliknya the problem of indigenous people in Indonesia. Thank you very much, Mrs. Moderator and the participant.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Aryu, for your deep explanation to answer the question from our participants about or regarding to what is government policy to protecting indigenous community. Okay, we still have two more participants that who want to ask any question. Okay, you can stand up and also say your name. And your question is redirect to Professor Sambu or for Dr. Ayub.
Okay, thank you for the time to me. My name is Abraham Samuel Huai. My question for Professor Sambu. My question is, in Professor presentation, Professor said that the batik has been recognized by UNESCO as Indonesian culture since 2009. However, in recent years, Malaysia has claimed batik is traditional product. What is Professor opinion on these matters? Thank you.
Well, it's a very interesting question. Who is the original owner of batik? It's a very specific question, and I think this has been the subject matter of debate and discussion. I think for the last few years. Even when UNESCO has come up with this particular statement that it belongs to Indonesia, but I personally believe, if you look into the various features of batik, I have made a little research on this with regard to India, because when I went to Indonesia, I saw everyone is wearing batik, and they gave me such amazing a feel that that prompted me to look into this research factor. And that time also, this question popped up, one of the students raised this question, that Malaysia is trying to come up with this claim that the batik is theirs. That question came to me, that I have seen batik from my childhood days, so batik is mine. And it's Indian, it's common to Kolkata, West Bengal. When I looked into the UNESCO, and I found that their research says that it's indigenous to Indonesia. Well, as a matter of fact, when I dug deep into the techniques that's being used in Rajasthan in India, when they're coming up with batik, and then how the batik is being made in Indonesia, they're completely different. Okay, so they're completely different, and each place, I'll tell you the difference. Different is a word which is very vague, but to be very precise, say for example, a story of a particular thing being depicted on a particular cloth with this art called batik. Okay, so that is different from one particular place to that of the other. In India, we have a different set of stories which is popular in this part of the world, being depicted in a little different way, and they also come up with batik. Now, the stories, the various things that you can see in batik in Malaysia, they varies from that of Indonesia. They varies from that in India. They varies that there are the 2 or 3 places in India where there are batik. It's not only in West Bengal, it's also in Rajasthan and some other parts of the country in India. So the technique is very common, okay, but then there are nuances and differences in the technique. Now, to resolve your the question, who is the owner of a particular design or a particular art. Now, very recently, I went to US, and I went to Washington, D.C., and then I visited an art gallery, okay? And it's a French art gallery. And when I was talking to the person who is in charge of the art gallery, I told that, like, there are so many things that I can see, which is common here, which I've seen in my country. So he said that, art is something which keeps on evolving, and it keeps on, like, engaging with the art form of another place, and it takes a different shape. Okay, so it's very difficult to really point out the person or the family member or the community who has actually started using batik in Indonesia. But this version must have traveled and traversed in different parts of the world, and have their own versions, own stories to tell through that particular art form. To make another allegory, the Darjeeling tea that is so famous across the world, which is owned by Darjeeling and other places in West Bengal, India, is not indigenous to India and Darjeeling. The European planters got some varieties from China and planted it in Darjeeling, which led to this Darjeeling tea. But we got a geographical indication or GI tag of the Darjeeling tea, which is the first one in India, and it protects the thing. Now, the point is, you can have your batik registered under GI. In India, we can have our batik registered under GI. In Malaysia, they can have their batik registered under GI, because every place have their own environment, own story to tell, own reflection of the things. And let me tell you that art form keeps on evolving with time. They come and they make a shape. Say, for example, you go to a particular place and you found a beautiful, thing. You try to think that, okay, why not I take a sample of that and I keep it in my own house. So in this way, the art forms move ahead in the world. There was a popular problem here in India, in Kolkata, it's a sweetmeat shop called Rasgulla, where, two states are competing, who is the owner or who is the actual creator of that particular sweet dish, whether it's West Bengal or it's Orissa. So the West Bengal got that by showing some proof and some documentary evidences. So I think, it is again the subject matter of research. Like, if Indonesia can come up with those documentary evidences, they can, of course, say that this form is theirs. And I think also they have got the GI of their batik. I think, that resolves your answer.
Okay, thank you, Professor Sambu, for your detail and also the explanation about regarding that batik has been officially claimed by the others nation. And it's not only in Indonesia, but we have the common traditional things between Indonesia and also in India. Okay, maybe we have the last participants who want to ask a question. Maybe you can stand up and say your name and your question is regarding to Professor Sambu or for Dr. Ayub.
Uh, okay, my name is Kalila Ailshadiandra. So my question for Dr. Ayub. Customary language is an important component in resolving disputes according to customary law, but on the other hand, customary law communities face the challenge of losing their customary language in digital era. How do the state protect this? Thank you.
To protect customary
Language in
language.
yeah.
Oh, to protect customary or indigenous community language, bahasa asli daripada komunitas tersebut, ya, bahasa daerah. Okay, the next question from participants, they're direct to Dr. Ayub about how the states or government to protect the language of the indigenous people. For Dr. Ayub, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I will say to bahasa to minimize the mistake. Untuk melindungi bahasa daerah. Jadi begini, in Indonesia there is the regulation about language. Ada peraturan yang mengatur tentang bahasa. But in Indonesia, many kind of customary language, or we can say that bahasa adat di setiap daerah. Bagaimana melindunginya? How to protect them? The local government have to make a regulation to protect and to know about the language, the customary language. Pemerintah daerah harus mencatat adanya keberadaan bahasa daerah di peraturan daerah. For example, the region identity. Contohnya peraturan daerah tentang identitas daerah kan gitu. Itu yang pertama. Memasukkan budaya adat ke dalam peraturan. The second, if it is a difficult, jika itu sulit memasukkan ke dalam budaya daerah, memasukkan ke dalam peraturan daerah, maximize use the customary language in our school, elementary, junior high school, and senior high school. Menggunakan bahasa daerah itu ke dalam subjek, to the subject materials in schools. Menggunakan bahasa daerah itu sebagai subjek dalam setiap mata kuliah. Yang kedua. The third, yang ketiga, maybe for the community atau di sekolah-sekolah, have a mandatory, mempunyai kewajiban untuk menggunakan bahasa daerah pada hari-hari tertentu. Jadi bahasa daerah ini berkaitan dengan budaya daerah, berkaitan dengan pakaian daerah pada hari-hari tertentu. Hari-hari tertentunya apa? For example, the Thursday or Friday, maybe. Pada hari-hari tertentu. Setiap civil servant, all the civil servant, teacher, the workers have to use the costume about the traditional costume. Use the traditional language. Menggunakan bahasa tradisional dan kostum tradisional. Dan yang terakhir, memaksimalkan in the wedding organization. Itu paling ini pemikiran saya. Menggunakan use the traditional language for the traditional ceremony. Jadi menggunakan itu dalam apa namanya upacara-upacara tradisional, the traditional ceremony. Hopefully, the society know and understand about the customary language. Harapannya masyarakat itu tahu tentang budaya dan bahasa daerah. It is very dangerous if the government do not do the protection about the customary language. Akan sangat berbahaya ketika pemerintah tidak memahami atau tidak melindungi bahasa tradisional atau bahasa daerah. Kenapa? Karena anak-anak sosial kita, for example, my children, contohnya anak saya itu sulit, difficult to speak in Japanese language. Sulit untuk berbicara dalam bahasa Jawa. It is very difficult because karena apa? In the daily activities, my children usually and always do the bahasa Indonesian language, menggunakan bahasa Indonesia sebagai bahasa keseharian. Jadi memperkenalkan itu tahap demi tahap. Jadi dari peraturan, kebijakan, the regulation, policy, in daily activities, and we do from now and from the special from the special material. Dimulai dari hal yang paling spesial atau paling kecil untuk melindungi bahasa tutup, to protection the customary language, untuk melindungi bahasa asli atau bahasa daerah. It is my answer from my opinion. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Okay, once again, thank you, Dr. Ayub. To answer about the question regarding what is a government policy to protect the customary or the indigenous people language. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and also the participant of international seminar, by judging at the time. So I think we will have to conduct our international seminar right now. And to conclude our international seminar, I will give the time to each of our speakers to give a closing remark or closing statement, and start with Professor Dr. Shambhu Prasad Chakrabarti, PhD, LLM, LLB. For Professor Shambhu, please giving your closing statement.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, of course. And I've been thinking within myself, when will different countries start planning to protect the huge knowledge base that particular country does have. And I think, in the last 2-3 years, my 20-30 years wish is slowly and steadily being fulfilled, and the efforts are being covered by the country to bring the knowledge system to the mainstream. So I really appreciate the University of Patimura's effort, especially the Department of Law, because whatever we do that needs some legal reflection on the society to be implemented in the right sense. So I really congratulate the department for taking this journey forward. And I hope that at least some of the faculty members and some of the students will carry on with this endeavor until you have a good law in protecting the rights of the indigenous people and their knowledge, of course. So, and I really thank Dr. Ayub for his very, very clear understanding and deliberation on the indigenous people and their rights, and how he really integrated with the indigenous peoples of Indonesia. So that has been a learning experience for me. And some of the question that has been raised by the participants, the students, really identifies, how clear they are thinking at this moment about this particular aspect. And I hope that these efforts taken by the departments, the faculty members, will actually impact the life of the students, and they will slowly and steadily take the discussion forward and make the objective of this conference, as Dean initially highlighted. We have to protect our communities, we have to protect our languages, we have to protect our culture. And I think, we will be able to achieve that. So that is my final remarks. And I wish that we do our bit, not only rely on other people, but we also do our bit in doing this. Start respecting indigenous people in the communities. Try to acknowledge whenever, you take the benefit or you use their information, their knowledge. Try to give acknowledgement. And I think it's in this way we can make a difference in the life of the people across us. Thank you once again, everyone, for having me here in this particular conference. Thank you.
Once again, give applause for Professor Dr. Shambhu. And the last one, we also have a closing statement from Dr. Ayub Tori Satrio Kusumo, SHMH. Please, Dr. Ayub.
Yes, thank you. My conclusion are the first, the obligation to protect and to fulfill the human rights indigenous people is not only for the government, the central government, but also the local government and society and us. Although there is no regulation to fulfill about the indigenous people in Indonesia, maybe we can do the best. I agree with Professor Sambu that we can do the best to protect and to fulfill the indigenous people, especially, for example, from the customary language, traditional language, maybe traditional custom, maybe, and it can because of if we know, we love. Jadi ketika kita tahu, maka kita akan mencintai. Kan gitu. If we know, if we understand, we will love. And the third is ini bukan sesuatu yang terlambat. It is not too late to make the regulation, not too late to make a regulation and to make a policy to fulfill the indigenous people, or we can say that masyarakat hukum adat, or the customary language, bahasa daerah. Tapi how we can practice it well. Tapi bagaimana kita dapat melakukan itu dengan baik. Karena because of if we want to protection something, ketika kita ingin melindungi sesuatu, jangan hanya membutuhkan adanya peraturan. Kita melakukan, we do everywhere in daily activities. It can same or similar with the protection. Jadi kalau kita menggunakan atau kita melakukan sesuatu secara terus-menerus, itu dapat juga merupakan bentuk dari perlindungan. It is for me. Thank you very much from Professor Sambu and the participant. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
For Dr. Ayu for your closing statement. Event today is not only enrich our knowledge, but also strengthens our commitments to keep the existence of indigenous community facing digitalization era. And before ending this session, I would like to ask for the online participant to please turn on your camera for photo session. Sebelum mengakhiri sesi kita di saat ini, saya mengharapkan semua partisipan yang tergabung di dalam Zoom untuk mengaktifkan kamera, to please turn on your camera to have a photo session. Okay, we'll have the photo session in 3, 2, 1. Maybe the operator can take a screenshot. Okay, and 3, 2, 1. Okay, once again, thank you for sharing opinion about this time. So on behalf of the committee, as your moderator, I would like to express my deepest gratitude for your attention, for all the questions, for all the participants, for our distinguished speakers, Professor Sambu, and also for Dr. Ayub. And let us close this session, and I will return the time for Master of Ceremony. Good afternoon for all of us.
Thank you so much for our moderator today, Ms. Fondal Hatu. We would like to express our sincere gratitude to our moderator and all distinguished speaker for the valuable knowledge and insights shared with us today. It was truly meaningful and inspiring. And of course, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to all the parties who made this event possible, to the faculty leaders, to the organizing committee, and of course, to all participants, both online and on-site, for your active participation. I am Faye Jedidia Saumena. As the Master of Ceremony today, sincerely apologize for any mistakes in words or conduct during this event. See you again in our next seminar. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good afternoon and thank you everyone.
Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Professor Sambu.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure listening to your talk.
It is a to me. Pleasure to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will leave the Zoom.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Same here.